Former interim WBA featherweight champion Jhack Tepora returns to action on December 17 in Bohol against Gino Rodrigo. He was originally set to face Ryan Maano, but due to unforeseen circumstances, Maano had to pull out of the fight. Tepora's bout against Rodrigo is scheduled for 8 rounds in the light welterweight division. Bill, alam naman natin na gumawa ng ingay itong si Jhack Tepora a few months ago for calling out Mark Magsayo. Clearly, nandun yung giggle to fight again, but this is the right way to do. This is the right way to do it for a boxer like Tepora who hasn't fought for over 2 years.
Oh, alam mo, ang mahirap dito, it's everything has been sort of been magnified in the negative, no, for Jhack Tepora. Una-una ang ganda ng record niya, no, 23-1, 17 KOs. Pero yung huling laban niya, after it sort of he fell a great distance after becoming interim world champion. You know, he lost to Oscar Escandon, and that's Escandon's only win in his last 5 fights.
Yeah.
Escandon had lost his last 3 fights before knocking out Tepora. So that, coupled with all this time to think about what has been happening to his career, you know, inabot siya ng pandemic. But sa totoo lang, kung may interest talaga sa kanya at may gumagawa ng paraan na lumaban siya, it shouldn't have taken him this long to get back into action. I mean, boxing is the first sport to return to normal. Kaya nagtataka lang ako bakit inabot siya ng 2 taon na hindi man lang lumaban. And then it's just a busy fight, no? It's just a tune-up basically. Kaya parang napakatagal ng panahon na lumipas para sa kanya na lumaban ulit.
Eh, totoo yan. Kasi kung titignan mo, itong Oscar Escandon fight, he lost that via KO. Parang double whammy ang nangyari kasi he lost his interim title. He was supposed to fight on the undercard of the fight between Manny Pacquiao and Adrian Broner, if I'm not mistaken. But he lost his title on the weighing scale. Hindi naman sa mismong laban. Now going back to the fight this coming December. Alam mo yun, kahit sabihin natin na malaki yung tinatawag na difference in terms of experience, sa akin kasi it still serves a huge purpose kasi dito natin malalaman kung nandun pa rin yung tinatawag na killer's instinct or sinasabing mindset ng isang boksingero kay Jhack Tepora.
Oo, at saka parang patong-patong yung problema, no? Natalo siya, knockout pa, ngayon naghihirap siya sa timbang, then he had a replacement fighter pa yung makakalaban niya na baka machambahan pa siya. I mean, we saw, you know, when Mark Magsayo first went to the US, he fought a replacement fighter and who happened to be very talented and luckily won. So parang ayokong sabihin pero parang may lumalabas na parang inaalat itong si Jhack Tepora and he really will have to do a lot to overcome that. First of all, he's only fighting in Bohol. You know, so I doubt if that's going to be covered on mainstream television. I doubt if anybody's going to see highlights of that on YouTube. And where's the interest going to come from if he's not doing anything impactful or highly visible? Kasi kailangan talaga makita ka ng tao and he really has to perform spectacularly well. Kung hindi, wala na siya.
Now, pag-usapan nga natin si Rodrigo. Compared to Maano, mas maganda itong record nga ni Rodrigo kasi he holds a record of 6 wins with 4 knockouts with 2 defeats and 2 draws. And he may not be as experienced as Tepora, but he has a far better record on paper than Maano, whose Maano has 5 wins and 11 defeats. But though he is facing Tepora, who's obviously a more experienced fighter, do you still see it as a good avenue for Rodrigo's development as a boxer, win, lose, or draw?
Oh, ako kasi hindi ko masyadong pinapansin yung mga talo ng mga baguhang boksingero. First of all, sometimes they get into the fight game managing themselves, or they go from one manager to another, or they're just part of a flock of boxers that some would-be manager is financing or taking care of. Kaya I take it with a grain of salt when you say yes, this early in his career he's already tasted a couple of defeats. I think this will be a good fight for him. If he has 4 knockouts, then that means he has some punching power, and he may be more of a natural at light welterweight than Tepora. So again, si Tepora na yun yung may panganib. No? He's taking more of a risk. Plus, as a replacement fighter, he's an unknown quantity. There's how do you scout somebody with how do you change your game plan with only a couple of weeks to go? So for me, it may be more of an opportunity for him. And if he ends up knocking out Tepora could become just a footnote, and he becomes the main story. Again, what is critical there is there going to be any media exposure for this fight card, so that either of these fighters will get some measure of respect and a lot of attention from the boxing community. Yun ang sa tingin ko mas importante, because there are fighters who become more well known after a tough loss than an easy win.
Bill, to end this discussion, you mentioned about the entire predicament or the entire situation of Jhack Tepora. Do you still see a glimmer of hope that Jhack Tepora will be able to regain his stature in the sport, which was very promising to say the least?
Alam mo, nung nabanggit na sa Bohol gaganapin tong laban, biglang pumasok sa isip ko si Boom Boom Bautista. For how many years there would be fight cards. For example, 2011, yung unang boxing event na ginawa sa Mall of Asia Arena. Lahat ng boksingero doon nanalo. Si Boom Bautista lang yung medyo hindi maganda yung pinakita. Tapos it turns out that for 2 years he'd been fighting with a floating bone in his wrist. And then nung lumaban siya sa Bohol, he was able to get his home crowd there, so many people, it was open air. Tapos yung dumating na kalaban, hindi pala yun yung dapat niyang kalaban, kapangalan lang pala. Not an 8-time contender for a world title. So a lot of disappointments happening along the way, and for some reason he was never able to really overcome them. So I hope that does not happen to Jhack Tepora, dahil magaling naman yung bata kung sa magaling. So for me, the concern now is how do you shake all that off? How do you make a shift? How do you get back on track for greatness? He's already been an interim champion. He was one step away from really becoming a legit world title holder. Kaya delikado rin tong laban na to, so he has to take this seriously.